region called the hypothalamus. Think of it as the biological air traffic controller of your metabolism. I call this the survival center, and it really doesn't care about your desire for a beach vacation. It only cares about keeping you alive. It operates like a thermostat. If your house is set to 70 degrees and you open a window, the furnace kicks in. Your body has a body fat set point. The hypothalamus maintains the set point using signals like ghrelin, which is the gas pedal, and the leptin, which is the brake. In obesity, we see a tragedy called leptin resistance. The brain goes nose blind to the signal of fullness. The wire is cut. So despite carrying 100 pounds of excess energy, the survival center thinks it's starving. It cranks up the food noise, that obsessive, intrusive loop about your next meal. You can't willpower your way out of the starvation signal generated by the brainstem. Retatrutide is the first triple lock bypass. To understand this, imagine your metabolism is a locked door. Ozempic was a single key targeting the GLP-1 receptor. Mounjaro was a double key targeting GLP-1 and GIP. Retatrutide is the first master key that hits three receptors: GLP-1, GIP, and the most controversial addition of all, glucagon. This brings us to the core of retatrutide mechanism. Why would we add glucagon? For decades, glucagon was considered the enemy of weight loss in some medical literature and bodybuilding science. Glucagon is the hormone produced by the pancreas that tells the liver to dump sugar in the blood. It functions essentially the opposite of insulin. So why do you think the manufacturer Eli Lilly put the sugar-raising hormone into the weight loss drug? Because when you stimulate the glucagon receptor simultaneously with GLP-1 and GIP, you unlock a biological state called thermogenesis. While GLP-1 tells your brain you're full and GIP buffers the nausea and helps insulin sensitivity, glucagon acts as the furnace. It tells your mitochondria to leak energy in the form of heat. I like to use this analogy. It essentially turns up your internal thermostat. This is why the phase 2 clinical trials showed an average weight loss of 24.2%. We aren't just eating less anymore. We're burning more while sitting still. But the most profound effect of this medication isn't on the scale. It's on the liver. There is a silent pandemic of fatty liver called metabolic associated steatotic liver disease, which is a type of fatty liver I see every day. When you look at a fatty liver biopsy, you'd see giant globules of fat occupying space meant for cellular machinery that have physically shoved the cell's nucleus to the side. If left alone, this leads to inflammation, scarring, and cirrhosis. In the retatrutide trials, researchers used MRI technology to measure liver fat. The results were fascinating. The high-dose group saw their liver fat drop by over 80%. More incredibly, 9 out of 10 patients who started the study with clinical fatty liver disease actually had their liver fat levels return to the normal range by the end of the trial. How do you think that happened? It's the glucagon liver axis. Retatrutide forces the liver to mobilize and burn its own stored fat for fuel. Practically speaking, it power washes the organ from the inside out. This is a massive clinical victory, but it comes with a high physiological price. When you turn up the furnace, the rest of the house feels the heat. And that brings us to your heart. In biology, there is no such thing as a free lunch. You can't fundamentally alter a survival drive without collateral damage. We must look at the price list for putting your body into biological overdrive. The most significant clinical signal for retatrutide is the heart. In the TRIUMPH trials, researchers noted a dose-dependent increase in resting heart rate. On the 12 milligram dose, heart rates increased by average of 7 to 10 beats per minute. Why is that? Because the glucagon receptor is located in your heart's natural pacemaker, which is called the sinoatrial node. Retatrutide directly stimulates that pacemaker, and you're essentially redlining the engine. If your heart normally idles at 70 beats per minute, it's now idling at 80. That's an extra 14,000 heartbeats a day. You're essentially asking your heart to run a half marathon every single day while you're sitting on the couch. Your heart doesn't get a recovery day, but your body keeps score. And eventually, the bill comes due. For a patient with a healthy heart, this could be a manageable trade-off. But for a patient with underlying issues, we don't yet have the long-term data on the cumulative strain. Now, let's talk about the muscle wasting potential, also known as sarcopenia. This is a side effect that concerns me the most because it's a foundational issue. When you lose weight at a speed of about 2% of your body weight per month, your body enters an emergency catabolic state. You not only burn fat, but also cannibalize muscle, which means you also burn muscle tissue for energy. Muscle is your primary site for glucose disposal and your organ of longevity. If you lose 60 pounds, but 20 pounds of that is muscle, you have fundamentally lowered your basal metabolic rate and in many instances lowered your metabolism. You have made yourself metabolically slow and aged, as this sets you up for a catastrophic rebound if you ever stop the drug. Because retatrutide is so potent, the gastrointestinal toll is potentially high. Nausea occurred in up to 60% of the patients, but there is a deeper side effect, which is feeling flat and losing interest in the things you used to enjoy. This is called anhedonia, and it happens to some people because retatrutide targets receptors in the nucleus accumbens, which is the reward center of the brain. It turns down the volume on dopamine. Everything from the spark of your hobbies to the reward of your morning coffee gets flattened into a grayscale existence. You've silenced the food noise, but you've also dampened the life noise. Protein intake is commonly evaluated in research setting for muscle preservation. While you should find your ideal amount of protein with your medical care team, studies often evaluate higher protein intake ranges to support muscle preservation. Some of these studies suggest 1.2 to 1.5 gram per kilogram of body weight for maintenance. Also, you need to be mindful of getting enough amino acid leucine, which is a signal to your cells, don't eat this muscle. And you might be wondering why leucine? Because it's known to be the molecular on switch for muscle synthesis. Number 2 is resistance training. Resistance training is frequently incorporated in clinical and research settings to preserve lean mass. This doesn't mean that you have to be doing bodybuilding or lifting exercises at the gym, but based on your ability, resistance exercises keep the muscle preservation signal active. Doing cardio burns calories, but lifting helps protect muscles, which is the engine for a sustainable and healthier transition. You would lose weight regardless, but if you lose significant amount of muscle, you would likely end up with a slower metabolism if for any reason you discontinue this medication. I think it's important to always keep exit strategies in mind when you start a medication. I go in depth in exit strategies in another video that I'll link below. Number 3 is heart rate monitoring. Heart rate monitoring and dose adjustments are typically managed in clinical settings. In general, if the resting heart rate is consistently spiking, working closely with your medical care team or your physician to find the appropriate medication dose is very crucial. If this is not done correctly or precisely, while it may not manifest in immediate noticeable side effects, the damage silently accumulates, but your body keeps score, and you may have to pay the biological cost at some point. Scientifically, retatrutide is masterpiece in molecular engineering. In the studies thus far, it's shown to improve the fatty liver crisis and the obesity epidemic. But it's a tool of extreme power, and it should be respected and approached wisely.